Hello, entrepreneurship class. So, to finish out the year, we're going to review the chapter about managing human resources. So, developing and keeping human resources, that's the key here. When you have people who are in your employ, there's really two major things you want to do. You want to develop them so they can handle more responsibilities and, move the company forward with that knowledge and with those skills. And also, you want to keep them around. You don't want to just develop them, get them all trained up, get them educated, and then ship them off somewhere else where they're going to work and reap the benefits of that development. So the keys are you want to develop and retain the people who work for you. So I'm going to start this out with a quote. So this is a great quote that a lot of managers that I've had, um, would not ever say, because there's a key part that they sort of don't understand about management, and a lot of people are like this, and it's easy to not understand it completely. The quote is from Jack Welch, who was CEO of GE. He's world famous. He's considered to be one of the better CEOs of our generation, of our lifetime. But his theory on employing people and the attitude he has towards his workers is he wants you to be happy to be here, but also be ready to leave. Um, there are things that come up as an employee, and what you want to do may not be part of your career path in your current job. I mean, I had a kind of a difficult conversation when I was leaving my last company. I went to my boss and told him. I said, hey, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice, and instantly he says, what can we do? Let's talk about it. Let's before we do anything you know permanent here. Let's talk about how we can keep you. See what we can figure out. And I said, yeah, this. It's not the job. It's not you. It's nothing like that. It's I'm just not happy, and what I want to do is not available at State Street. I want to become a teacher, and that's where I'm going. And he instantly kind of understood. He's like, well, that's good. He's like, you got to follow your heart and do what makes you happy. Um, but what I was getting at, you want your people to be happy to be there, but also ready to leave if it's what's best for their career, and you want to instill that in them. People are willing to follow you if that's what if that's your mentality. If you tell people, listen, I want you here, I value you, you're good, and you provide a valuable service to the organization, but if something better comes up and it's going to get you where you want to be, I support you, and I will write you a reference. I will help you get where you want to be. I mean, that's what a real good leader and a really good manager does. Um, they take you as a person into consideration, and they help you get where you want to be, whether it's with the company or not. So, what are our objectives? So, I believe there are only two major ones here. So, by the end of this chapter, you'll be able to list and describe the sources of employees. How do you source them? Where can you go when you're searching for people to work for your organization? And what are the pros and cons of each of those sources? And second of all, what are employers responsible for regarding, regarding training and development? Sorry about that. So, what are employers responsible for regarding training and development for employees? All right, so jumping right into it. So, human resource management. So, human resources is another word for your employees or your personnel, and they're the people that are employed by a company, just to get the basics right there. Human resource management is the part of a business that is concerned with, there's lots of aspects to this, but hiring and firing, um, you know, attracting and retaining employees, and also separating, whether it be amicable, whether it be friendly. Like when I left my company, it's no hard feelings, but where I want to be is just not here. There are other things I want to do in life, so I'm going to go elsewhere. But there's a process for that from an HR perspective too. And also, if people are not doing their jobs, if people are not right for the job, you have to find ways to move them out, get them in a position where they can, do a good job, do what you need them to do for the organization, or it's time to move on, time to separate. Dealing with unions is another thing. Teachers, I belong to a union, and as an employer, so as like the principal, Mr. Romano has to deal with the union. Less him, a little bit more on the superintendent in the school area or arena. But it's another major thing if it's a unionized workforce. So you have to be able to deal with the union and make sure to keep the union happy. Training and development. Now, we touched on that just a little bit already, but HR, one of the chief responsibilities of human resources is having plans in place to train and develop employees. Pay and benefits, how to administer pay and benefits. What are the pay scales? How much are you going to pay your people? What sort of benefits are you going to offer them? It's a very important. A lot of it comes down to understanding your industry. If you're going to pay more than anyone else in your industry, that's great, but you'd better be getting more from your people than other people are as well. There'd better be a reason for it. You can't just pay people more because you want to pay them more. That makes you less competitive. It increases your costs, and that's not always a good thing. The pay and benefits has to be commensurate with the level of employee that you have. And also day-to-day personnel issues. There are always issues. Employees don't think they're being treated fairly, and they have to have somewhere to go, and they have to have a process to follow to file those complaints and people to talk to where they can, resolve those issues. And that's a major part of human resources as well. And also compliance with HR laws. There are laws. You're not allowed to employ children, for example. No one, I think it's the age of 15 and a half maybe, are not allowed to be employed. There are, of course, extenuating circumstances, stipulations that can be met. Like, for example, if it's a company business, if it's a family business, children can work there. But there are laws that must be followed, and it's the responsibility of the Human Resources Department or the Human Resources function to make sure that you're complying with those laws. All right, so to get into detail on some of these, so hiring and firing. So it can be very, very hard to find good people. How do people find those, really good employees who are going to take the organization to the next level, who can do all the things that are necessary to be successful? So where do people look? So first of all, what are the sources? How do organizations find people to work for them? So one of the best sources is your existing employees. And that means they already work for you. So are they capable of doing more? Can you give them more responsibility, move them up, train them, groom them to be, employees who do more with the company? So existing employees are an excellent source of candidates if you have job openings. And why is that? Well, first of all, you know them. You know them very well. All right. You know what they're good at, you know what they're not good at. So you can tell if they're going to be a good fit for the role that you need to have filled. So that is a huge pro. The training costs are going to be low, or at least lower. If you're training someone to do a completely new job, at least you don't have to train them on the basics. They already know the general lay of the land. This is what time we come in. This is who the key people are in the organization that you need to know and build relationships with, that sort of stuff. They already know systems that you might use internally. So that sort of stuff is already understood. It's also very, very motivating to employees. When I saw people all around me getting promoted, it was a good thing. It says, all right, then I have the opportunity to do that as well. And it says to people, we are looking to promote from within and train people and do the right thing by them. It makes you want to stay with the company when you know that there's a future and there's the prospect of promotion and becoming a leader, or making it to whatever level you aspire to. Another source is the internet. So places like Indeed or Monster.com, things like that. So a little bit more about that. So they can be both good and bad. From they're good for quantity, that's for sure. You can get a lot of applicants very quickly, but of course, you don't know them. People can look very different in the real world than they do on paper. So that's one of the concerns that you might have. It's also very cheap to find people that way. Employment agencies. Now, employment agencies are great for certain types of positions. So they're good because you have someone basically doing the work for you. So there's an agency that's actually finding someone who fits, a certain profile, or has certain skills, can do certain things for you, but it is expensive. A lot of times, the employment agency will get the person's first year's salary as a commission. So if you're hiring someone who's going to get paid $50,000 a year, the employment agency can get paid up to $50,000 to find you that person. So very, very expensive. Referrals are an excellent source because, especially if it's, internal, people that who currently work for you referring other people. That means you know them. The person who's referring them understands the organization, knows the other person, is willing to say, I think this person will be a good fit and has the skills needed to do the job. So referrals are a very good source of employees. What my company used to do was they would actually pay people to give referrals. Like I think it was twice that I did it. It was at least once. It might have been twice, but like a friend or an acquaintance of mine, I'd say, hey, we have this opening, and I think you'd be a good fit for it. If you're interested, throw my name down as a referral, and I would get paid. I would get, whatever it was. It was like $2,000 or $3,000 to refer someone if they first of all get hired, and if they retain for at least 6 months or a year. So companies want that. They want referrals from their existing employees because they understand the company and they know the people. So there's more of a chance of it being a good fit and working well. Classified ads. So this is pretty old school. Not a lot of companies do this anymore. But you can put an ad in the classifieds and say, help wanted. I'm looking for a construction worker. I'm looking for an office temp. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for that. You can actually put an ad out there and then have the people contact you. And finally, walk-ins. The type of job is important here. I mean, walk-ins are an important source in places like, Dunkin' Donuts, entry-level work. People might walk in and say, can I have an application? And again, for entry-level work, that's good. Not many people are going to walk in and say, hey, I heard you have a CEO role open. That's usually not the way that works. Another interesting source is your competitors. So, for example, if you are running a slime party business and someone else does something similar a couple towns over, and that they have people who work for them, and you hear good things about them, you can get in touch with them and offer to hire them. That's great because the people, they have the skills. Competitive intelligence, so you can kind of pick their brains and say, okay, well, how did your organization handle these issues? How did they handle this? What systems did they use? This and that. But on the bad side, it's expensive. You typically have to give people a raise in order to lure them away from where they are. So it's expensive for you. And also there's retribution. So if you start hiring people from a competitive organization, they will turn around and do the same thing to you, take your people away. It's very expensive to lose people and constantly be retraining them. At one point, the division that I worked in most recently at State Street, we hired so many people from a competitor. Their CEO actually called our CEO and said, listen, this is enough. It was like this can't go on. And they actually worked it out, and they agreed that for 6 months we wouldn't hire anyone else from them because we were growing so fast and we were taking so many of their people. So it's bad in that part because you got to pay them a lot because they have good skills and you have to lure them away from where they are. And then the other company can do the same thing to you. All right, training and development. A major part of human resources is having plans in place and having programs to train and develop employees. So the first of that is, of course, initial training for new hires. So when people get hired to work for your organization, they um, they need to understand, the lay of the land, whatever the systems are, and just basic training. So, this is the system that we use. This is how you use it. And even this is where the break room is. This is where the bathrooms are. I mean, you got to have a plan in place. You can't just hire someone, say, okay, there's your desk. Good luck. High five. Like, no, it doesn't work that way. You need to have people who are responsible for doing it and have plans and procedures in place to get people trained and acclimate them to, whatever job they're going to be doing, and the atmosphere in which they work as well. And the key is it has to be consistent. You want all of your people to receive the same training, because you don't want people doing things different ways. They're doing the same thing different ways across the organization. That is a recipe for disaster. The second thing you need to provide are educational activities. So you need to bolster the knowledge and skills of your people. You need to have, some programs at State Street, they would encourage you to, seek classes. They would offer a whole bunch of classes online. You could look things up, if you want to learn how to, query a database. There'd be a training program, and you can go and you could do it, and you put that in your file, and then everybody knows that you've completed this training. You have these skills. You need to be able to provide. You can't just take someone, sit them at a desk and say, all right, figure it out. You have to provide them with some sort of skills training and knowledge training if you want them to be able to excel at their job. And finding developmental activities. It's not just all about, pushing buttons and knowing how to do specific tasks. A lot of it is about leadership and soft skills and growing as, if you want to become a manager, you need to be exposed to different activities that are going to develop you into, becoming a good manager. So you want to prepare your managers to lead. You should always be looking for the next person who can do your job and do the next job and do the next job. So that's one of the ways that you have to think as a human resources employee, where you have to have plans and procedures in place in order to provide those activities, provide those developmental options and activities for your employees. Okay, so let's review where we've been. So as a review, I want you to list 3 sources of employees and what are the pros and cons of each source. What are the good things and the bad things about 3 of the sources that we talked about? And second, what 3 things are employers responsible for regarding, training and development? What 3 things are employers responsible for regarding training and development? Right, that is all for this video. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, bye.